Okay, good morning, everybody. Hey, we're going to get started. Hey, Samantha, how you doing? Great to see you guys today. I see
Morning.
Kelly's here. Hey, how's it going? Greg, glad you guys are here. I'm sure other folks will join as well, but let's get started. I want to be respectful to everybody's time. Kelly's here, Samantha's here, and Terry's here. Great to see all of you guys. This is prospecting using Remine. It's a really cool workshop all about going after leads. So I am recording the webinar today, so I think you'll like it a lot. It's all about really going after prospective sellers primarily. My name is Carlin. I'm from Bright MLS. I think I've met most of you before. If I haven't met you, I certainly look forward to seeing you in person at some point. I know Bright just sent us official Bright MLS masks, which I guess we'll be using in the field, I'm sure, until something changes. I hope you guys are all well and have stayed safe through all of this. I'm very glad to say that our family has been fine so far, and I have a son that's a nurse that works in like an assisted living facility, so we were very worried about him for a while. But anyway, this is a really cool workshop. I've been in the business for 33 years. I sold real estate. I ran an office, and I've done everything that I'm going to show you today. I've done. So it's a really, really interesting thing to talk about going after leads, because you guys are in the business of establishing a pipeline. And the biggest problem we have right now with pipelines, especially on the listing side, is that there's not enough listings. So, in sales, you have to constantly be filling that pipeline with, some new leads. And maybe you're buying leads from Zillow, maybe you're working floor time, maybe you take an occasional open house for somebody so that you can get some buyers. There's a lot of things that you can do. We're going to talk about some of those, but I'm going to really primarily focus on how you can go after people that you don't know at all. Like, for instance, in sales, you have to market your sphere of influence. I'm sure that you guys are doing this. I would hope that you are. If you're not letting everybody know that you're in the real estate business, frankly, you just won't get any leads from that. Just like if you don't if you don't buy leads from some website, if you don't buy leads from Zillow, or you don't have a personal agent website that generates leads from you won't get business from that. If you don't market to your sphere, you simply won't get leads from that segment of potential leads that can come to you. Same thing with referrals. Most agents at some point stay in touch with clients, but very often they stop that process. In Bright MLS, you can stay in touch with a former client by simply setting up an auto email and sending it to them once a month. It's a very interesting thing to be able to do. And when you set up an auto email, one of the options is to basically send that thing monthly. If you just sold a house to somebody and you want to be able to get referral business from them and get their brother and their uncle and all of that, it's really simply just about staying in touch with them. And that's one of the things that comes up in the National Association of Realtors. What do they call it? The profile of buyers and sellers. It's a survey that goes out once a year, and they ask agents every year. They ask clients who had a real estate transaction. They say, is this your first real estate transaction? If they say yes, then they stop asking them the questions. But if they say no, it was not, they will then ask them, did you use the same agent that you used before? And most people say, no, I didn't use the same agent. For the ones that say, yes, I did use the same agent, they ask them, why did you use that agent? And of course, we know what the answer is. We just talked about it. That agent stayed in touch with them. It's simple as that. So referrals is a big part of, having a sturdy pipeline. Same thing with being members of clubs and organizations. If you're not connected to the community in some kind of way, if you're not a member of the local VFW or Knights of Columbus, or you don't, I don't know, go to a food bank periodically, or you're just not connected to things where people are, you won't get leads from that. These are really basic things in sales to take into consideration. It's very important because you want to be able to get leads from a lot of different places. Same thing with Instagram and Facebook and LinkedIn and Twitter. Social media can be kind of silly. My kids left Facebook at some point and they all went to Instagram, which is really the same thing as Facebook. people are there. If you don't have an Instagram page or you don't have a Facebook business page, you don't have your LinkedIn built out, you're not using Twitter, I would say, why not? Because it's an opportunity to connect with people. We're not really going to talk about these things today other than what I just mentioned, because I'm assuming that you guys are doing this stuff. If you're going to be a professional real estate agent, you have to be where people are. What we're going to talk about today are basically ways to do some type of a proactive targeted outreach to people that you don't know at all, using primarily this program in Bright called Remine. We've done something on this before where we touched on it, but I'm going to go into much greater detail on Remine today. Remine is a third-party product that comes with Bright MLS. You're paying for it. It comes with your Bright MLS subscription. And essentially what it is public records data. It's a database of every property that exists in Chester County and Delaware County and Philly and Montgomery County, all around the country, as a matter of fact. So they know who owns the property. They know when they purchased it. They know who their mortgage is with. Very similar to Bright's public records. However, Remine went a few steps forward to do things that we did not do. And I'm going to show you those things today. They went and grabbed some data that we did not have. And rather than having us have to build it, we partnered with Remine because they have it. So you can leverage that stuff to be able to go out and get some leads. So the biggest problem we have in the market right now is listing inventory. There's just not enough listings for sale. So, you know, if you're running around with a buyer, you know this. Anybody that's running around with a buyer, basically, it's difficult to find properties. I was talking to an agent yesterday. It's a friend of mine that said, we submitted 12 offers for this one buyer that they have, and they lost on every single one of them. Every single one of them. On one of the properties, there were 20 offers on that one property. The buyer had submitted an offer that was $20,000 above asking price, and they still didn't get it. And at some point, the buyer just said, you know what, the hell with this. I'm going to wait until next spring. They decided, but plus I think the wife got pregnant. And so they decided, this is not the right time for us to do this. We missed our opportunity, and they wanted to try to line it up with other things. So they're going to have their baby and they're going to start again next spring. So I'm going to show you some things today that I think you can use to your advantage to try to go out and get listings. I'm going to show you some very specific things today. I'm going to show you, first of all, how to access Remine. Then we'll talk about how to search Remine, how to view the data. I want to make sure you understand the information before we start mining it. I'm going to show you how to prospect in Remine using this thing called Cell Score. Remine has a predictive analytics built into it that they came up with themselves, where they basically are predicting whether a property is likely to sell in the next 6 months. It's either low likelihood, medium likelihood, or a high likelihood. A property that has a high Cell Score, Remine says, we're fairly confident that this property is going to sell in the next 6 months. And how do they know that? If you ask them, they're not going to tell you. It's proprietary algorithms that they built, basically. But I can tell you that some of it is about how long they've owned the property, how much of their mortgage they've paid off. But it's other things too. Remine is looking at social media and whether they just had a kid or somebody died in their family. Lots of things. And some of it's creepy. But Remine, their own due diligence says that it's about 55% of the time when they say a property has a high Cell Score, meaning it's highly likely that property is going to sell in the next 6 months. 55% of the time, it does sell in the next 6 months. That's crazy. So if you know that and you could send something to that property owner or reach out to that property owner in some way, wouldn't you want to be the person that gets the listing? Sure. The only reason you wouldn't get that listing is that you don't do anything that I'm going to show you today. So I'm going to challenge you to take action on some of this stuff today. We'll talk about how to access owner-occupied properties in Remine versus out-of-state or absentee owners. There's a lot of interesting things you can do. One of the things I like about Remine, especially if you want to go after investors, is the ability to find an investor that owns a property in, let's say, Chester County, but they also live in Pennsylvania. You know, they don't live at the property, but they live in PA, or they have a property in Pennsylvania that matches our criteria in Chester County, but they live in Texas or something out of state. So that's pretty cool. I'll show you that. We'll also show you another really crucial thing that's part of Remine, and that is the ability to access contact information. We'll talk about that when we dive in here. The contact information that's in Remine is basically the result of them going out and getting phone numbers and email addresses for owners of properties. Crazy. You know, to be able to have somebody's email address, nuts. To be able to have somebody's cell phone number right from the public record system. I mean, if I had to guess where we were going to go as Bright MLS, it would be where Remine went here. So we partnered with them, and you have access to all this stuff. I'm going to show it to you. Ultimately, you're going to be able to print mailing labels. You'll be able to export the data out of Remine and do something. This is about taking action. And we'll do some Q&A at the end here to make sure you don't have any lingering questions about anything we're talking about. One quick screenshot here, and then we'll dive in. This is how you get to Remine. Basically, you go into Bright, you click on the search menu, which you guys do all the time. And instead of just going right down here to residential sale, which is probably where you normally go to search for listings that are residential, you're going to go down here to Remine Pro. Remine Pro is right there. It's been there for years. I mean, literally, we had this in trend before we became Bright. So we're talking about 2.5 years or so you've had this. I want to make sure you know how to use it so that if you choose to take action and go after listings, that you know how to use this program to do it. And I can tell you tons of success stories that I hear about people that are using Remine. So let's go in and do it. I'm going to dive right in. Really, what we're kind of talking about here, I'm just going to bring up a quick postcard. I just went out and did a Google search that said real estate postcards. This was one of the images that popped up almost immediately. This is kind of what we're talking about. You may have some kind of a postcard. I'm looking, I had an envelope here. Here we go. You may have some kind of a postcard that says the thing that you want to say, that, hey, are you thinking of selling your home? Are you looking for a real estate agent? Hey, were you going to sell in the spring, but then COVID-19 happened and you just bailed on it? You know, whatever the thing is that you want to say, hey, we just listed a house around the street, around the block from you. If you're thinking of selling, let me know. That's kind of what we're talking about. You might have a postcard that says that thing, and all you need for it is a label, or you really need to know, who should we send this thing to? There's lots of examples of postcards. I'm sure you guys have a ton of them. Remax has great stuff. Most, you know, corporate real estate companies have a flurry of things that you can purchase that say the thing that you want to say. You don't need to be a master at putting the thing together yourself. I mean, as a matter of fact, let me just talk about Vistaprint here for a second, because I'm sure you've heard of Vistaprint. Vistaprint, and we have nothing to do with these companies, by the way. Vistaprint is a third-party company that sells business cards and marketing materials. If you're a roofer and you want to do a postcard to everybody in the neighborhood saying, you know, hey, I can fix that roof. You know, a lot of roofers walk by and they look at all the roofs in the neighborhood, right? And they leave the postcard at the houses that have the bad roofs. So you can find a real estate postcard in here. All I did was go to vistaprint.com, go into the section called marketing materials, and went down into the postcard section. And then ultimately, when you get into the postcard section, you can search by industry, and there is a real estate industry category. So here's a bunch of real estate postcards. This one here says just sold. This one here says free market analysis. It's kind of what we're talking about here, right? Thinking of selling, that would work. We're talking about reaching out to property owners we don't know at all, to try to reach out to them and say, hey, are you thinking about selling your home? Hey, you bought your house 15 years ago. Do you know that it's worth a lot more now than in this market? Are you thinking of selling? I'm a local agent. I can help you. I know what the value of your house is. And then you're hoping one of those people will say, yes, I am interested in having you. I got your postcard, Mike. Hey, can you come out and tell us give us your spiel. Tell us what you think this place is worth. And then you have a listing appointment, right? And then you got to knock the ball out of the park at that listing appointment. That's what we're talking about here, taking action in some kind of a way. By the way, Vistaprint also has door hangers. You can go at the Vistaprint and dive into the section on door hangers and walk around a neighborhood and put these things on the screen door of properties. By the way, make sure if you're going to do something like that, that you consult the local borough or township, because some of them will charge you a fee of like $10 a year or something to be door-to-door selling. You're not really selling, but to be able to put something on somebody's screen door, they may require you to have a little permit. But this is something I'm seeing a lot of, especially younger agents doing. They're going out into a neighborhood and they're either putting these on every screen door in the neighborhood, or they're going out very strategically and putting them on very specific screen doors where, hey, I know this person over here has owned their property for 20 years and they have a high sell score and they have $200,000 worth of equity in their home. That's what we're talking about today. We're going to talk about how to use Remine to do these things. So I'm going to turn my video off. Let's dive in. Let me show you exactly how to do all the things that we talked about. So I'm going to go into Remine. And again, the way you get into Remine is you go to the search menu in Bright, and you come down under search, and you go right down here to Remine Pro. So when I click on this, what you're going to see here is up at the top, a new tab is going to open up, and Remine is going to open in that tab. So again, Remine is a third-party product. We didn't build this thing, so there's a little bit of a learning curve. You got to figure out how to use it, but it's not difficult. I find that it's a pretty easy system to use. There's a menu over on the left side here. The ones that you're going to use primarily are going to be this one called Search. You're going to use this one called Carts, and you'll use this one down here called Alerts. If you download a file, if you download an export file of a list of property owners, Alerts will let you, is where you can go to get that file. And it'll also sometimes pop things up on the screen. So if you wanted to come in here and start doing a search, you'd come out here to search and click on it, and you're going to be presented with a map. You know, it's going to open up somehow. It may open up really wide like this. All those little bubbles on there, they basically let you know how many properties are underneath here. This is public records data. So remember, this is a database, just like Bright's public records. It's a database of every single property in all of these counties. So who owns it? When did they buy it? What did they pay for it? Who's their mortgage with? Do they have a sales score that's high, medium, or low? Is it owner occupied? Is it residential? Is it commercial? All of that stuff, the land use code, the lot size, the number of bedrooms. And of course, we're sharing data back and forth with Remine, so they know the status of the properties in terms of MLS status. So you can go into Remine, and in addition to searching the ways that I'm going to show you, you can also say, I don't want properties that are actively for sale. So you're going to want to do that too. So basically what you want to do is when you get in here, you want to start to get, first of all, when you get into the search menu, you want to get to some area of the map that you care about. So if you care about, let's say, the Westchester area, I mean, obviously you guys have some offices in this neck of the woods down here in southeastern Pennsylvania. So if I scroll through on the map by hitting the plus sign, or if I just double click the map, you can get the map to where you want it. So right now I can see there are properties all over the place on this map. Essentially what's happening is that on this map right now, there are over 100,000 properties. And what you can do to narrow it down further is use these tools that are on the left side. So what I want to do first is I want to show you the data. I want to make sure that you understand exactly what this data is about. So I'm going to show you a very specific property address, because you can go up to this box up here and you could just type in, you know, Westchester. And you'll see that after you type in the words West space Chester, you'll see there's a city known as Westchester in Remine's database. You can click on that, and it will literally bring you right down to Westchester Borough, and it draws the lines around the limits of the borough. Now you're only searching in the borough. So if you didn't want to just search in the borough, you could go up to the top here. By the way, any criteria that you pick is going to be up in this bar up at the top. If you wanted to get rid of the boundaries around the city of Westchester, you could just hit that box, and now the map will stay the same, but now you're looking at everything that's on this map. And on this map right now, there are 6,235 properties. So you can narrow it down a bunch of different ways. You can even just type an address in there. And that's the way I think you'll start to learn how to use Remine, is to type in an address. So I'm going to look at a specific address here. I'm going to turn my video off for just a moment. And we're going to look at a property here known as 2 Oak Circle in Broomall. It has a lot of good data in it. That's the reason I want to show it to you. So you can see that 2 Oak CIR, it comes up with a number of different properties that match that. And this one right here is the one I'm after. 2 Oak Circle in Broomall, owned by William Moore and Mary Kate Remy. If I click on that, in a new tab now, the property data pops up about this one property. It's kind of like being in Bright and seeing a list of properties and then clicking on the MLS number, and then that one property pops up as an agent full report. Or if you're in public records, you click on the tax ID and all the data about that one property comes up. Same kind of thing here, and it opens up in its own little window. So let's run through the data here. They have some pictures up here that they got basically from us. So this property in the past was listed, and there were 13 photos, and those 13 photos we're sharing with Remine, just like they're sharing a lot of their data. So one of the things I want to mention here is that up at the top, there's a little dashboard here about this property. A couple of things here. It's off market, so we know that this property is not for sale right now. We also know that this property has a low sell score, meaning Remine, using that predictive technology, says we think this property is unlikely to sell in the next 6 months. It's a low sell score. It's a low likelihood it'll sell. We also see that there's a number here, 322, 117. What is that? Well, it's kind of like the Zestimate, you know, that you guys sell against all the time. The Zestimate is an example of something called automated valuation modeling. So in the industry, we call it AVMs. An AVM is a prediction of the value of the property using data around it. Like this is a single family split level home. Remine basically, I can tell you how they got this information in a moment. They basically used a company that they use several companies to look at what they think, what these companies think the value is, and then they pick the one they think is highly representative of the real value. But essentially, it's a computer program looking at all the other properties nearby that are like this one that sold recently. So if everything else nearby this house sold for between 315 and 345, they look at this property and say, okay, we think it's worth 322. So it's an example of what they think the value of the property is. So this particular property, the Remine believes it's worth $322,000. And below that, you can see estimated equity is $139,000. So Remine looked at the mortgages on this property, and what they did was they amortized those mortgages. So, you know, if this mortgage was originated 5 years ago, well, these people have owned the property for 8 years. So if they had a mortgage 8 years ago and it was at 6.5%, 6 years ago, they probably paid off this amount of the mortgage. And then they compare what they think the principal balance of the mortgage is, and they compare that to the value that they come up with for this property. And based upon those two differences, Remine says, we think there's $139,000 worth of equity on the property. So there's a lot of cool stuff here that you can use with your clients. If you go into all these sections, a lot of the stuff you have in Bright already. Like here, if you click on flood risk, it'll show you a flood map. You have that in Bright. Parcel map, you have that in Bright. This is kind of cool. The street view, this is like the Google Street View. So this will show you what this property looks like from the street. And you can't pan around here, but you can see what the property looks like based upon that crazy Google car that drove up the block. But then you scroll down here and there's more information: the year built, the total square foot, the total living area. So it's a 1,300 square foot home. This is public records data, right? So it's the same kind of stuff you would expect to see if you were looking at public records in Bright. It's stuff that we got from the courthouse, and this is stuff that Remine got from the courthouse, the tax information. Then you come down to this net equity section here. So this is an example of how they came up with this number. They basically say, we estimate the loan balance on the mortgage to be 183, and we estimate the value to be 322. The difference between those numbers is 139. That's where they came up with the amount of equity. So they know the mortgages that are on this property. And sometimes there's more than one mortgage, right? Sometimes the owner has their first mortgage and they also, maybe they took out a second to put a roof on or something. So Remine is looking at all the mortgages and amortizing them and then comparing what they think the balance of those mortgages to the value of the property, coming up with equity. So that's a tremendous advantage here. You can search using that net equity. So the rest of the stuff here, I'm not going to spend a whole bunch of time here. There are different sections, you know, the valuation section here. This is how they came up with the value of the property. They looked at a product that First American had. First American is a company that does public records data. I used to work for a First American. First American became CoreLogic. We had an automated valuation product that we sold to banks and lenders and government agencies that need to know quickly the value of a property. So First American says, we think it's worth 322. You can already see Remine thought that was the best estimate. Black Knight, which is another company that does this kind of thing, they say, we think it's worth 364. Redfin, we know them. They're a real estate company. They also do, they're trying to disrupt the real estate business in some way. And they have this kind of stuff on their website too. So Redfin thinks it's worth 340. So Remine looked at all of this and said, we think it's worth 322. So again, you got these sections here. When you click on these sections, you got information in there. This is really cool information. I would suggest that when you're going out on a listing appointment, that you go and you look up this stuff in Remine, bring that stuff to the listing appointment with you, share it with your seller. A lot of this stuff is in Bright too. You have information in Bright about schools and demographics. All this stuff is in Bright already. But the part that I want to show you here that's in addition to all of this is a section called Associated People. By the way, these different sections that I've been clicking on here that are all collapsible, you can also get to them up at the top here. So if I wanted to get right to the valuation section, I could click on valuation at the top. I could also click more, and I could get to associated people from here too. But you can also just scroll down the page. If you scroll down the page, I want to show you this. The associated people section is looking at what information was Remine able to go out and collect about people that have used this property address, you know, in various other databases. And what I'm talking about here is, for instance, phone numbers and email addresses. How did they get them? I mean, it's as simple as this. You know, you go to ShopRite or Giant or Wegmans or whatever, and they say, look, if you sign up for our little club here, every time you buy orange juice, you can get 50% off or 50 cents off. Or you go to CVS, hey, I want to buy these cough drops, but if you use the CVS thingy that hangs on your keychain or whatever, you can get 25 cents off the cough drops. Great. What do you do to get that benefit from CVS or Wegmans or Best Buy or wherever you went? You gave them your phone number. You gave them your email address. What do those companies do? They sell it to everybody. And that's kind of the way Remine got this stuff here. So William Moore is one of the owners here. William Moore basically at some point went out and gave his email address to some company. William 62686 at AOL.com. That's his email address. He also has a phone number. This phone number here is not on the do not call list, by the way. If it was on the do not call list, you would see a big DNC right next to his number. That's probably this guy's cell phone number. So if you were going to try to go after this property owner in some way, you could call this person or email them. Doesn't look like there's anything in here for his wife, Mary Kate, or his girlfriend, or whoever that is. So Mary Kate Remy, there's no information for her. She's not signing up for that kind of stuff. But so it's hit or miss on this stuff. When you start to look at these properties and you're looking for additional contact information, sometimes it'll be there and sometimes it won't. And sometimes Remine doesn't have great data. It's like sometimes you'll see that there's an email address, but it doesn't look like an email address. It'll just say, you know, William 62686, and there's no at Gmail or Yahoo. So sometimes it's there, sometimes it's not. But again, if you're into making telephone calls to people and trying to get them to list their property with you, which is a hard thing to do, you will have some phone numbers in here. So does anybody have any questions about anything we did so far? So I want to make sure you understand the data at a pretty basic level here. If you have any questions, just go ahead and unmute. Remember, all I did was I was in Bright. I went to search. Under search, I came down here to Remine Pro. That opened up this tab here. And when I was in Remine, we were on this tab called Daily, and this is like a little dashboard that I don't think you should care anything about. Don't worry about this thing. When you come in here, you're going to go right to search. Once you go to search, it's going to open up a map, and now you can start to put a search together to try to find leads. That's the best use of Remine, and that's what I want to show you how to do next. Does anybody have any questions about how we got here so far? Remember, all I did to find that one property is I went up into this box and I typed in 2 Oak CIR, and that opened up this other tab, and then we started looking at the data about this property. But I want to show you things more at a macro level. You know, how can I go into Westchester, or how can I go into West Goshen and find everybody that has a high sell score and is owner occupied, that kind of thing, and give me a mailing label or give me a data file. That's what I want to talk about next. So I don't see anybody unmuting, so that's good. That sounds like I've explained it well so far. So let's dive in here and let's start to do some searches. So I'm going to go in here to Remine. I'm going to go back to this first tab, and on this first tab, I'm going to get this this map to where I want it. So I want, let's say, West Goshen. I can see Woodcrest. There's Westmount. Let's actually move it out to here where I can see a number of different communities in the Westchester area. So on this map right now, just because of where I have it centered, by the way, I'm moving this map around just by holding my mouse button down and dragging it around. On this map right now, there are 30,000 plus properties. I don't want 30,000 properties for what we're talking about here, but I want to get some leads, right? I want to try to get some listings. And why not go after people that have a high sell score? Well, I can easily do that by just going over here onto this menu and going to the tool called sell score. This is a filter. Remember, Remine has given every property a low, medium, or a high sell score. If I go into the one called high and I click apply, we go from 30,000 properties down to 707 properties. That's what we're talking about here. Let's get a little more specific. Let's go down to this field here called building type. This is about the type of property. I don't want pizza shops that have high sell scores. I don't care about duplexes here. I'm looking for single family properties. So I'm going to go in here and say, only show me single family properties. So these don't necessarily match all of the terminology that we use in Bright. So, you know, single family is what they call single family really is detached in Bright. So if you want anything that's residential, you're going to want to go in here and choose single family, condo, and townhouse. That'll give you all of those. So when I pick those three and I click apply, from 707, now we go down to 704. It didn't change it that much, but that's okay. So now we're getting what we want. Maybe you only want owner-occupied properties too. Maybe you don't want properties that are owned by investors. Well, you can easily just narrow it down as well by going out here to this field called absentee. When you click on absentee, I can say, only give me properties where the owner is the occupant, and click apply. And remember what this is. We talked about it when we did a prospecting class before using just Bright Public Records. Owner-occupied means the property address and the mailing address are exactly the same. That's all it means. So if the mailing address was different, that would indicate that because the tax bill is being sent, you know, to South Carolina, that we would know that that's not a property where the owner likely lives there. If they live there, the taxes bill wouldn't be sent to South Carolina. So I can go in here and use absentee to my advantage. So here's a list of 541 properties on this map that have a high sell score. By the way, once you bring this map up, the list of those properties is over here on the right. These are the properties that match. If we want them, basically what we're going to have to do is choose to select them. You can also go in here and select just individual properties just by clicking on them over here and just grabbing the ones that you think you want. But I probably want all of these. Let's actually narrow it down a little further. I'm going to just double click here or hit my plus button so I get in closer on West Goshen. In this West Goshen area that I'm looking at right now on this map, I'm looking up here. There are 27 properties up here that match my criteria. Let's actually zoom out just a little bit more to get a little bit more. By the way, one of the other things I want to mention here is on this map, you can also draw shapes. These tools that are right up here at the upper right of the map are, this one here will let you draw rectangles, this one here will let you draw circles, and this one up here will let you draw polygons. So if I click on the polygon, if you didn't want everything on this map, let's say you just wanted everything inside here, you could go up to this polygon tool and click on it, and now come out with your mouse and click and let go, click, let go, and you see that little line I'm dragging around. Basically, I'm choosing to draw a shape on the areas where I'm clicking. And I'm trying to get back to the beginning here, and once I get back to the top here, I've drawn the shape. Now, inside that shape, there are 50 properties inside there. So you can get down to that level. So you can do lots of things here. So again, I'm not going to use this shape, but if I want to get rid of the shape, over here at the top, I need to scroll over a little bit. And that overlay polygon, if you want to get rid of it, just hit the X and it gets rid of it. So now on this map, there are 205 properties that have, remember, a high sell score. We don't know why they have a high sell score, by the way. We just know that for whatever reason, Remine thinks there is a 55% chance that that property is going to sell in the next 6 months. Sometimes it's more than that. By the way, if you look at 205, probably 120 of these are going to sell in the next 6 months. That's the due diligence that Remine did with this program. These are properties that have a high sell score and they're owner occupied and they're either detached, single family, or condo. Detached townhouse or condo in this particular case. So again, this is the list of properties over here on the right. If you want them, here's what you do. You go up to the top where it says select all. You click on them. You click on this one checkbox. It selects all 205 of them. And then what you have to do to get them is you need to click on cart. Once you click on cart, Remine will prompt you to give this cart a name or to put it into one of the other carts that you dealt with before. So if you want to put these into one of those other carts, you can hit this little drop down, but you can just create your own cart just by typing a name for it. So I'm going to call this sample with Remax Town and Country. I'll just put RMT and C, and then click add 205 properties to cart. And this is how you get them. So once you click add 205 properties to cart, you're going to see in a moment, a little box will pop up here at the right, and it's giving me those properties, and it's kind of scrolling down here. Once I have them, where they are is over here in the carts. So if I want to get to them to do something, remember, I have a postcard. I have some kind of thing. The thing says, hey, how'd you like to list your house? Or, hey, you thinking about buying or selling? Or, hey, and by the way, if you're going to go after these property owners, you don't want to say something on your postcard that says, hey, I looked up your property and it says you have a high sell score. These people don't know what the heck high sell score means. You're going to scare the hell out of them. You want to be pretty generic with this. Remember, something's going on that Remine has a pretty good reason for thinking that they're going to sell in the next 6 months. We don't necessarily want to address that in our mailing piece, but we want to get something in front of them. So I have this thing and I want to get it in front of them. So I just grabbed those 205 properties. How do I now do something with them? Here's what you do. You go over to the carts menu. When you click on carts, you're going to see a list of all of the carts that you've been playing around with over here on the left side. But the one that we just did is going to be the one that's going to first display here. So sample with RMT and C, that's the one we just grabbed. Here are those properties. You can click on any of these addresses just to kind of look at things if you want. Or you can just grab them all. You can see at the top here, you can export these. You can send mailers. You can also click more and print mailing labels. I'm going to talk about all of these in a moment. I'm going to go up to the top here and I'm going to hit this checkbox. I want all 205 of these. Once you tag them here by clicking that checkbox, let's say you want a data file. If you click on export, Remine will say, okay, you're going to export this in CSV format. CSV, comma, separated values. It's a text file. It'll open up in any program that opens up spread, data, like Excel or Google Sheets or whatever you use. So you got to give it a name first. I'm going to call this sample RMTNC. That's going to be my character, my file name. And then down here, choose your columns. You can pick which fields of data you want in this file. So after a while, you're going to realize that really you don't need all of these fields. You probably only need about 15 or 20 of them to do what you're trying to do. So what I'm going to do right now is I'm just going to say include all columns. So I'm going to hit this little slide bar right here. That's going to give me them all. And then when I click export, what's going to happen is Remine is going to give me this data file. Let's see up the top here. It'll notify me when it's ready. Once it's ready, it'll be down here in alerts. But you're going to see in a moment, Remine's going to pop something up on the screen and say, hey, your data file's ready. And then we'll go look at it. Once you grab the data file, it'll open right up in, whatever program, again, you use for spreadsheets. But let's say you want to tag all of these and you just want to print a mailing label. You can go over here to the More menu and click Print Mailing Labels. Remine will say, well, who do you want on the label? Do you want property owner or current resident? So these were all owner-occupied properties, so I want the property owner on here. And where do you want to send it? To the property address or the mailing address? I want to send it to the property address. Remember, all of these were owner-occupied. So the property address and the mailing address for all of these properties are the same already. And then which label do you want, the 5160, 61, or 62? The 5160 is the most popular label that everyone uses. The 5160 is the 3 across. You've seen it before. It's 3 across. It's basically 3 rows of 10, and it's 30 labels to a page. You basically peel them right off. Once you get up here and you choose the label that you want, and then you click Print Labels, you'll see in a second here, this file will go down at the bottom left. You can see right down here, it's download. I'm using Chrome right now. So the download happened and it's a PDF. So once I click on it in its own little window, here's the mailing labels. Here's the mailing label for all of these people that have basically have a high sell score and they are owner occupied and they're in one of the property types that I care about. That's amazing. I can now peel these things off, put these things on my postcard and get these things out and try to get some listings. And again, it's not a one-time thing. You have to do this on a regular basis. And I'm going to challenge you to try it, because this is a very viable way of getting listings. Every high producer that I've ever met, and I've been in the business for a long time. I did this stuff using way back in time when a company called Realist in Philadelphia was the MLS in the local area here, and when Trend was the MLS. I did all of this stuff, and sometimes I walked around neighborhoods and put door hangers on. Sometimes I just did mostly I did mailers. And in addition to all the other things that I was doing, again, keeping in touch with my sphere, going after referrals, buying leads, working an open house for somebody so I could find a buyer, I was also doing this stuff. And then periodically I was getting a lead from that. And Edward Grossman reaches out to me and says, "Hey, Mike, I got your postcard. I'm thinking of selling." "Oh, great. Can you come out?" "Sure." Are you available this Saturday at 5? "Sure. Come on out." Now I got a listing appointment, right? That's what we're talking about here. Adding this to the bag of tricks that you already are working. So again, this is one specific example of how to do that. So if I go back here into Remine, I'm just going back to the tab I was in. I would venture to say that that first, that export file is ready. I can see down here I have an alert. I'm going to click on that alert. Let me turn my video off for a second here. There's an alert right down here. And the alert is that, hey, that sample RMTNC download is ready, that export file. If I click on download, I'm going to get that file. So here's the Remax tnc.csv file. If I click on that, it's going to open right up in Excel. Here's the file. And in this data file, there's all kinds of stuff. I'm going to just format this for a second here. Here's the APN, that's the assessor's parcel number, basically the tax ID. You have the property address, the house numbers, the mailing address, the ownership names, like every field of data you can think of. But if I scroll over to the right side here, this is what I want to show you in terms of phone numbers and email addresses. If you scroll over to the right side, remember, we took every single field here. And in the real world, if I was going to use Remine on a regular basis, I probably would not choose to grab every single field. There's only certain things that I need. Here's all the owner information, and you can see here are email addresses. This Richard Boyd, here's his email address. Here's an example where they had a bad email address. So Jackson G. Denton isn't an email address, but they got the email address somehow over here in the phone number field. So they kind of screwed something up here. Here's an email address for Barbara Dietz at Comcast.net. Barbara is she has something to do with this property, and here's an email address. Here are phone numbers over here. So if you scroll over a little bit more, here's a phone number that's on the do not call list. It says DNC next to it. However, here's for the next person here, Richard Boyd. Here's one phone number that's on the do not call list, this one. I know it because it says DNC, but here's another phone number right next to it that's not on the do not call list. That's probably that guy's phone number. What happened to my file here? I lost it here, sorry. There it goes. That phone number right there is not on the do not call. That's probably that owner's cell phone number. So if you're into calling these people, if you grab the data file, you have the ability to kind of go through here and make phone calls too. So it's tremendous amount of stuff here. You can use this data file and suck the data right into some other program that you use. So if you use a program with Remax to just import contact information, and it creates some type of contact management for you and allows you to start to set up alerts and things like that. Hey, I did a mailing to all these people, and then I want to go through the ones that had phone numbers and do a follow-up call, 5 days later, something like that. You can kind of set that up if you bring this data into that program. Once you have it in this format, you can save it as anything else you want. I could go up here and choose file and do a save as, and just call it, save it as a workshop. Or a work, what do they call it in here? They call it if I click browse, I can put it kind of anywhere. They call it I forget what Excel calls it. It's basically save it as an Excel file. It'll give it .xls. Or if you just leave it as a CSV file and you bring it into Google Sheets, you can save it in there as a different format. So there's all kinds of stuff you can do once you have it in an Excel format. I want to start to build on what we've done, but let me take a moment here. We're 45 minutes in, got about 15 minutes left. I want to take any questions you might have. Does anybody not understand anything that we've done so far? Anybody have any questions about anything that we talked about so far? And if you don't, that's fine. That just means you're understanding it, which is great. It's always nice to have some feedback. It gives me a chance to take a sip of my coffee too, but that's okay. I'll take a sip when I'm done. Let me go back in and get a little more specific here. So let's go back to Remine. Remember, all we did to get to this list is we went to the carts menu. But before that, we were on the search menu. When we were on search, here's the last search we did. I want to show you how you can get even more specific. Remember, we talked about the amount of equity that these people have. We talked about the ability to search for absentee owners. We talked about the ability to search for properties using the length of time that they owned the property. So in addition to everything we said on this list here, remember, we got 205 people right now that are owner occupied. They're in one of the property types we chose. They have a high sell score. If in addition to that, I want to say, I'm going to use this field here called ownership time. What if I also care about how long they've owned the property? Like, don't give me somebody that's been in there for 5 years. I want someone that's been in there for 15 years or more. Well, I can go in here and just pick these preset tools, 15 to 20 years and 20 plus years. If I click apply right now, which I'm going to do, it's going to narrow this down to everybody that matches all that other stuff who also have been an owner for 15 years or more. Why? Because somebody that owns their house for 15 years or more probably is more interested in knowing the value of their property. In addition to that, let's use the home equity. Remember, Remine is calculating how much equity these people have. So if I click on home equity, I can use one of these presets, or I can simply type in some numbers. So if in addition to everything I chose, let's say I want to make sure everyone on this list has at least $150,000 worth of equity, I can go up to the top here, type in 150,000, and then leave the max blank here and click apply. And now we're down to 135 properties that match everything we chose. That's amazing. Every one of these people have at least $150,000 worth of equity. They're owner occupied. They're in one of the property types we chose. They have a high sell score. You'd be crazy not to go after these people, right? Again, you're paying for this program. This comes with Bright. The only reason you won't get one of these listings, remember, out of these 135, about 60 or 70 of them are going to sell in the next 6 months. Why shouldn't you be the agent that gets the listing? The only reason you won't be is that you don't do any of this. That's all. It requires you to take action in a way that maybe you've never done before. So if you've never done this, try it. I can tell you, if you do this, you give it 6 months. Decide to do something for 6 months and give it a shot. I guarantee you, you're going to get some type of a lead that's going to get back in touch with you that's going to say, Mike, I got your postcard. When can you come out? We are thinking of selling. We didn't realize how much our property could have gone up in value. Again, some of it has to do with the piece you use. Remember, you're going to want to come up with some kind of a good postcard. And there's a lot of ways you can do it. We talked about using Vistaprint. The other thing I want to show you here is that if you go out here to carts, remember that list that we grabbed a couple of minutes ago, here's that list of properties that we grabbed before. You can tag them up here and you can export. We did that. You can also go to more and print mailing labels, or you can go to this option right here called send mailers. If you choose that one, Remine has they've basically partnered with a company called Rocket Print and Mail. And that company is kind of like Vistaprint. They do postcards and flyers and mailing pieces, and they'll do everything for you. They'll mail everything for you. So if you don't want to touch any of this, you're busy doing lots of stuff, right? Let's use Rocket Print and Mail to do everything. So you got to give it a campaign. I'm going to call it test campaign. And I'm going to call this, I don't know if you need to use, I don't know if they take spaces here. So I'll just call it test. Did I spell it right? C-A-M-P-A-I-G-N. And click on continue to Rocket Print and Mail. And what you'll see happen here is it'll shoot you off to this program. Again, this company that Remine partners with, you got to click on continue to Rocket Print and Mail. And in a new window, this Rocket Print and Mail company will come up here and says, get started now with your test campaign label. Which product do you want? I can pick the postcard. Give me a 6 by 8.5 inch postcard. And it's 205, and this is going to cost me $155 to do it. Again, I'm talking about trying to get a listing where I could potentially make thousands of dollars by spending a couple bucks on this. if I click on choose a design, it'll bring you to a page where now you can pick one of the designs that Rocket Print and Mail has. So which design category? General farming, just listed, renter, just sold, absentee owners, a lot of cool stuff in here. Let's say we want just basically general farming. We're trying to get a listing. If I click on general farming, it'll bring me to another section here and it shows me a bunch of designs. So which one do you like? This one here says navigate the real estate market. This one here says time to buy or sell your home. That would work. Selling your home, looking to buy or sell, thinking of buying or selling, whatever. You can personalize it by uploading your headshot to it or your company's logo to it. That's what we're talking about here, guys. I don't think it's that difficult of a concept for any of you to understand. If I go back to Remine, it's all about how you do the searches. So I'm back to the search menu. There's lots of other ways that you can apply filters. Remember, I just did a search on the particular map that I'm looking at right now. If I change the map and I move it over here to this area that shows Winderley, Gradville, there's Ridley Park, Ridley Creek State Park. On this particular map, there are 23 different property owners that would match my criteria. And I'm using all those things that I chose before. Let me get a little more specific. Let's talk about absentee owners for a moment. If I go over here to absentee, and I change this from owner occupied. Matter of fact, let me just go in here for a moment and get back to sort of where we were. So we're kind of around here. If I change this from absentee, in this case, owner occupant, to absentee in state, this will give you people who are basically investors on this map that match everything I chose, but they also live in the state of Pennsylvania. Their other address is in PA. And on this particular map right now, there are 36 absentee owners I could go after. These are investors, again, that have a high sell score. They they own a property that matches the criteria we chose, and they have equity and all that stuff, and they also live in Pennsylvania. Or I can go to absentee and I can choose absentee out of state. So every one of these people now that are on this, there's only 2 of them, and they're both right there. That owner lives somewhere outside of Pennsylvania, and you would have that information in whatever the data is that you put together. So there's a lot of different ways to put this stuff together here. The question that really pops up here, if you decide to do this, is, given all of the information that you have here, this program really forces you to confront who is it exactly, given the name of every property owner in a particular area, who is it exactly that you think you'd want to go after? You got to figure that out. You got to think about it. So, if you think you're after property owners that have, a certain number of bedrooms that match this criteria, let's go back for a moment. Let me just show you one other thing here, and then I'll open it up for some Q&A. If I go back here to owner occupant, and I apply that. So basically, we got rid of the investors here now. On this map, there's 147 people. Let's first of all make sure that everyone on this list is not already selling their house. So what you can do is you can go up to this menu at the top here called Advanced. There's a menu item. So instead of just using these filters on the left side here, and there are others in here, by the way, Airbnb, you can use all kinds of other things. If you turn on Airbnb, it'll show you locally where there are Airbnbs being offered. Sometimes somebody that is using their property and renting it to somebody via Airbnb, they might be interested in selling their property. You could target those people if you wanted to. But if I go to the advanced menu up here, you can use more criteria elements than just what are on the side of that map. So for instance, the listing status is one of the ones I would tell you to use all the time. I would want to go in here and I would want to choose off market. If I choose off market, we're going to basically kick any property off the list that might happen to be for sale actively in the MLS. So we're eliminating those. The other thing I would suggest that you do is if you know that in your market there are not enough 4-bedroom properties, I could go over here and type in, I want properties that have 4-bedroom or more, and then click, just by adding that stuff, it adds it to the search. And to go back here, I need to click on, if there's an X at the top, that gets you out of advanced search and brings you back to the map view. So on this map now, what we're looking at is a list of 64 people that own properties. It's owner occupied. They all have high sell scores. They all have at least $150,000 worth of equity. They all have 4 bedrooms. How do we know that? Because public records data that we got for this area has the bedroom count. There's so much you can do with this. If you know that there are not enough 3-bedroom townhouses for sale in the area that you care about, you could specifically go in here and say, show me all the townhouses that have 3 bedrooms and only give me the people that have ISEL score and only give me the ones that have at least $100,000 worth of equity, and do a mailing to them and say, you know what? There are not enough townhouses for sale in this marketplace. If you're thinking of selling, I'm a local real estate agent. I would love to come out and give you a free market analysis. Somebody at some point is going to say, I got your thing. I'm interested in talking to you. That's what we're talking about. Prospecting using Remine is an opportunity for you to get some listings and to bring some deals into your office and to make some money. So take advantage of these things. I'll answer any other questions that you guys might have, but I'm going to start to wrap it up here. It's 10:56. Does anybody have any questions about anything we talked about here so far? And feel free to unmute. I'd love to hear, what you think about what we talked about here and whether it's been, delivered in a way that was easy to understand. Let's hear from you. And I'm going to mute and I'm going to take a sip of my coffee.
Thanks, Mike. This is really good. You always give us insight on what we need to look for.
Thank you so much, Terry. I appreciate that. Thanks for the feedback. I think it's a fairly simple program too. Was there anything about it that seems, undoable for you?
No, I questioned a couple things. Like I looked up my property and it has me as an absentee owner. So
That's interesting. See, that's an example of one of the things that and by the way, I think that's the aberration in this program. Sometimes Remine just gets it wrong. Most of the time they don't, but sometimes they get it wrong. And again, it's a third-party company. We can't control what they do. But I would, for something like that, I would go to the support menu down here and I would report that to Remine and say, you guys need to fix this. My mailing address is exactly what the property address is. I shouldn't be in here as absentee owner. And they may go in to fix your thing, and then they'll realize we screwed up a bunch of these, and then they fix it. That's what would happen if you reported something like that to us. So yeah, I would say at a high level, remember this is high level. I think most of the time you're going to have really, really good data, but it's not going to be perfect. And we're hoping at a high level, again, to do 150-piece mailing, we're hoping that out of those, really 140 of them or so are probably really good information, and we're going to get something from it. But it's about a repeated operation here. It's not about one-time thing.
exactly. And it really is good information for sending out a postcard. It does work.
Cool. And has anybody here done anything like this yet? Is anybody actively sending mailers or anybody doing direct mail in some kind of way, telemarketing? Anybody that's on the call actively doing this, or is this something that's brand new to you? If it's brand new to you, I can tell you just from experience and from working with agents for, literally decades, it's going to feel uncomfortable at first. It just, if you've never done it before, just like if you started a Facebook page and now you had to start putting content on it regularly, it's going to feel uncomfortable at first. Like, wow, I've never done this before. But once you get in and you start doing this, you make this part of your process. Remember, there are a lot of ways that you can get leads. You're not going to stop doing the other things. You're not going to stop taking some floor time calls. You're not going to stop, working your referrals or your sphere of influence to try to get leads. You're going to add this. And now this becomes a place where you will occasionally get a lead where you weren't getting them before. So anyway, thanks for all the feedback here, guys. Let me go ahead and wrap things up, and I'll answer any other questions you might have. Remine does their own support. If you have questions about anything in Remine, or you have a question about how to do something in Remine, first of all, I want to also let you know you can reach out to me anytime. I'm going to give you all my contact information in a second here, but to really ask something that's about Remine, where it's a something you think is a flaw or something incorrect, what you want to do is you want to go to the support menu in Remine. Remember, this is what you'll see, that menu on the left side. Click on support, then the support center. It'll open up a website for you, and you can report things. You can call them, you can email them, they can do a live chat, stuff like that. So feel free to go out and do that. I'll answer some questions after we're done here. I'll stop the recording. Here's all of my contact information, guys. It's always a pleasure to get together with you guys. Great office. I look forward to coming out in person again once things open back up. I love your office. It's a really nice office, by the way. I was always commenting when I walked in on the all the stonework that was in there when you walk in. I look forward to getting back on the road. I feel confined to my home office, and just like all of us have been. At least you guys can get back out and start showing properties again. We really haven't done any in-person activities since St. Patrick's Day. So I look forward to getting back out there and seeing you all again once it's determined safe to do so and all of that. Right now, the company says we really can't do that till at least the end of September. We'll see what happens. So anyway, I look forward to helping you if I can help you at all. Feel free to reach out to me anytime. Otherwise, I hope you guys are all well. Enjoy this beautiful day today. Peace. I'm going to go ahead and stop the recording, and I'll talk to you all soon. Take care. See you guys.
Thanks, Mike.
You got it.